Hello, I'm Emma Marsden. I'm going to be joined later by Siltja Bolibaugh and June Pan. We're going to talk about IRIS as a hub for open scholarship in applied linguistics. First, I'll describe what IRIS is, and then I'll discuss 4 problems with our research practices and suggest ways in which IRIS can help address these problems. And finally, I'll talk about some of the challenges and some of the developments, and at this stage I'll be joined by Siltja and June. What's IRIS? It's a database, a repository for instruments and data for research in language studies. This is the interface where you can search and download materials and data and analysis protocols and postprints. And then also at the bottom you can see submission and upload of new material. IRIS was established in 2011. It holds materials and data and analysis protocols and postprints on all topics related to languages research. It is inclusive of all approaches, including qualitative materials and qualitative data. IRIS contains many field-specific ontologies. This means lots of metadata that's searchable by different methods, participants, context and measures. We have about 6,800 materials bundled into 3,500 records. We've got about 266 data sets, and IRIS has had about 80,500 downloads. So why share our materials, our data and our code and postprints? There are many rationales. Some of them relate to economic and pragmatic reasons, how to do things more efficiently, do more for less cost in less time. There's a very strong set of rationales related to social equity, that by sharing our resources and our data, we can improve the social justice in the knowledge economy, both locally and globally. There's also a set of professional and personal incentives, whereby individuals are incentivised by their local or national target setting and professional development and promotion criteria. There's also a strong argument that open scholarship improves the quality and the scope of our research. So I'll discuss some of those again when I'm highlighting 4 problems with applied linguistics research and how IRIS could help to address them. The first problem that's been identified many times is the poor availability of materials, the things that we use to collect data. We found that about 4% of self-paced reading studies had the actual stimuli available. About 35% of grammaticality judgment tests were openly available when we checked back in 2020. And Derek found that about 17% of materials are available online or in articles. But without open materials, how is it possible to scrutinise and build our research agendas over time and space? One consequence of this is that there have been low amounts and low quality of replication research. We found that an estimated rate of replication, self-labelled replication studies, was about 0.26%, which means about 1 in every 400 studies is self-labelling as a replication study. The second problem is a lack of independent replication research. We examined the relationship between findings of a replication study when there was no author overlap between that replication study and the original study, the study it replicated. And we compared these findings when there was an author overlap. 1 or more authors were both on the original study and on the study that was replicating that original study. When there's no author overlap, you can see that a few more of the studies find findings that are supportive of the original findings. But when there's author overlap between the original and the new study, you can see that they're much more likely to be supportive of earlier findings. Now, there's lots of reasons why this could be, why author overlap leads to a greater tendency to find supportive findings. And I won't go into those potential reasons now, but when you scrutinise each of them, none of them are particularly healthy for our discipline. The third problem is poor availability of data. We found only 6% of replication studies used data from the original study in the new study to create a cumulative data set that could be analysed. On average, each meta-analysis has to eliminate about 59 studies because the data from the original study or from the studies being included in the meta-analysis can't be found. Meta-analysts spend some time trying to contact the authors of studies asking for the data because they need the standard deviations or the sample size or something about the data that isn't available in the article. But few researchers respond to those requests. We found that about 22% responded to our requests. So, without access to this data, how can we check and extend previous data sets, analyses, and claims? So, how can open scholarship, things like IRIS, address the lack of open materials and data, and so improve replicability and reproducibility? Many individuals and groups do make instruments open. There are many language corpora that are available, and there are many tools that are made available by a range of individual researchers on their own websites or on institutional websites. But IRIS is searchable and holds tools and instruments across all these different institutions and people and publishers and countries. It doesn't rely on individual researchers to maintain their site. Another example of how open materials and open data can support the quality of our research is through registered reports. Registered reports improve transparency. In registered reports, review takes place before the data are collected, and they require that materials and data and code are made available for reviewers during the review process, but also that these materials and data are made openly available after acceptance. This means that registered reports, by enforcing shared materials and data, improve data sharing and data reusability. They also increase the rate of replication research, and they've been shown to mitigate publication bias. On to research problem 4. This sets us the challenge of improving the scope of our research to increase the diversity and the inclusion of the participants and the contexts in which we do research, and also increase the diversity and inclusion of the producers of our research. It's been observed that we have narrow sampling practices. Many of you will have heard about the acronym WEIRD. Our populations from which we sample are very often weird in some dimension. That is, they're westernised and or educated and or industrialised from industrialised, rich and or democratic countries. That is, they're often university students, highly literate from certain socioeconomic backgrounds, and the languages investigated usually include English, either as the first language or the language being learnt. Indeed, almost every sample has been one of convenience. But we as applied linguists, we need to investigate diverse literacy levels, socioeconomic statuses and language backgrounds, because we know that this affects language learning, language teaching, language use, and opinions about language, etc. So how can IRIS increase the scope of participants, producers, and contexts of research? By sharing methods, This encourages people to engage in open, multi-site research, which can also be replication research, in order to diversify the contexts in which we collect our data. By sharing methods, tools, and platforms, this enables a wider group of people to engage in research as producers of research because they can access freely available tools. So, on to part 3. What are some of the challenges and the developments for IRIS? 37 journals promote IRIS to their authors, but we found that only about 14% of studies actually had materials on IRIS or another site. We suspect this may have improved a little bit, but not substantially. Another challenge is the tension between academic competition, because we have to admit our innovation is precious, and sharing our materials and data. There's a tension between this innovation as something that is competitive and also the idea of sharing and open collaboration. It's a challenge for us to actively include different epistemologies, methods and topics, to actively encourage people who have qualitative data. One principle by which that can help qualitative researchers is that of as open as possible, as closed as necessary. So our materials and our data may not always be able to be completely open because they may have context-rich characteristics. They may have information in which we can't make openly accessible for ethical reasons, and in which case materials and data can sometimes be kept closed and to the extent that it's available for bona fide researchers only. Another challenge is time. Engaging in open scholarship, uploading materials to IRIS and data does take a little bit more time, and incentives are needed, and in particular to protect early career researchers and support them. And sustainability and money. Sustainability is unlikely if a repository relies on short-lived funding or on one individual staying in an institutional post or alive. It's our ambition that IRIS and OASIS become much more part of the community's responsibility, and we ask that professional associations please help us in this endeavour. And finally, we need more meta-science to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions such as IRIS that aim to improve and facilitate open research. And on that note, I'll hand over to Silcha, who'll talk a little bit about some data on that very topic.
IRIS has been an innovator. It's provided the infrastructure we need to share our materials, data, and code, but I think we're all aware of the messiness that can lurk beneath a published paper, and I think it's fair to say that the open research movement has been characterized by a just get it out there approach. Now, IRIS does help authors to upload the materials and to make sure that these are sensibly named and organized, but there are limits to what we can do. So we wanted to know, are IRIS deposits, and here data deposits specifically, fit for purpose? In other words, are they useful and reusable? We recently carried out an evaluation of datasets that have been uploaded to IRIS in the 5 years between 2017 and 2022. First, we evaluated the quality of the datasets in terms of how complete they were. And by that, I mean that we checked whether all the data needed to reproduce the analyses and results in the associated publications had been archived. And here, most of the deposits scored well. Then we evaluated the datasets in terms of how reusable they were. So did the authors include separate README files? Did they make sure that their files were machine and human readable, etc.? And here we found that, unfortunately, applied linguistics researchers are very similar to those in psychology and other disciplines. The majority of deposits suffered from problems that limited their reusability in important ways. So what this tells us is that with initiatives like IRIS, we've made important strides in developing the infrastructure we need, But alongside our efforts to get researchers to share more, we need to help them share better. And there are some very easy ways in which the community can improve the quality of their shared data, for example, by using open file formats, using data dictionaries, and archiving raw data alongside the clean data. But there are also some thornier issues, including how we can embed a culture of sharing, given very low levels of prevalence at the moment, and how we can make sure that publications are openly available and that requirements to share don't exacerbate existing inequalities. And finally, I think there's a question of whether a narrow focus on archiving data that's needed to reproduce the statistics in a paper can preclude optimal levels of data sharing needed to future-proof our lines of research. So the work done by IRIS needs to be complemented by more work on developing a consensus in the community. Thanks, and over to you now, Junlin Pan.
We're proud that IRIS is continuing to develop. It has transitioned to a new cloud-based platform, relocating all records to a new digital environment. This updated interface simplifies the process of searching for information and submitting materials. The revamped IRIS has expanded its scope to include all research related to language learning and use. It has introduced a new category of material, postprints, to enhance equitable access to scholarly outputs. Since its launch in August 2022, IRIS has accepted 42 postprints. Another exciting development is assigning a permanent identifier, a DOI, and generating a reference to every object held on IRIS. This initiative enhances the recognition and protection of intellectual property for research material complementing published works. For more information about IRIS, please visit our website or contact us via email. We have a dedicated team to support you. Thank you.